The second Caliph of Islam, Umar Bin Khattab رضی اللہ عنہ. Umar Bin Khattab رضی اللہ عنہ.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم النبيين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا حبيب الله الصلاة والسلام عليك يا نبي الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا نور الله. Dear viewers of Madani Channel, we welcome you once again in our new episode of our program, the second Caliph of Islam, Umar Bin Khattab رضی اللہ عنہ. Dear viewers, we're talking about the rule of Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ, the governance, the caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ. And today we will discuss about the freedom that was given during the time of Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ. Again, something Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ had given a lot of freedom from every perspective during his caliphate. And people, whether it was from the perspective of business, whether it was from the perspective of following your own religion, whether it was from the perspective of reforming the leader himself, whether it was from the perspective of voicing your concerns, whether it was from the perspective of giving certain opinions, etc., etc. From every perspective, we see that there was a great deal of freedom during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, which, if we scroll through the pages of history, we will not come across any such example during the time of any other leader, where people had such freedom and such comfort level, where they could even go to the extent of voicing their not only concerns, but they could also say words of reformation to the leader himself as well. So dear viewers, we'll briefly discuss this element of the Caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh in today's episode. First of all, let's listen to a virtue of sending peace and salutations upon the noble Prophet, the final messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam has stated that he who sends salat upon me 1,000 times a day will not die until he sees his abode in paradise. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Dear viewers, we're talking about freedom given during the Caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh. Now, when we talk about the freedom and the vastness that was given during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, dear viewers, we come to know that it was during the Caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh that most number of non-Muslims embraced Islam. This is a fact, dear viewers, that most number of non-Muslims embraced Islam during the Caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, but not even a single example can be brought forward where one can say that anyone was forced to embrace Islam. Never, dear viewers. It was all through propagation, through character, and through virtue that Islam was spread. So, during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, everyone had freedom of whatever they wanted to practice. So, dear viewers, during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, we come to know that most non-Muslims, they embraced Islam, and none of them were ever forced to do so. And this can also be reflected in today's day and age, dear viewers, that how much Islam has spread today, subhanallah, in every corner of the globe we will see the flag of Islam hoisted high, and the voice of adhan, subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest, subhanallah. This voice can be heard throughout the globe, throughout the hour, round the clock. How? That when it is time of Fajr Salah in one part of the world, it would be time for another Salah in another part of the world. And when it is a time of Dhuhr Salah in some other part of the world, it would be time for another Salah in another part of the world. So round the clock, the voice, the words of Allahu Akbar are echoed around the globe, subhanallah. So dear viewers, Islam was not spread with force. It was spread through propagation, through character, through virtue. And it was the Caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh in which most non-Muslims at the time embraced Islam. Now, when we talk about the freedom that was given to people to practice their faith during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu. Now dear viewers, the example of everyone being able to practice their own faith during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu can be seen from this incident where an elderly woman came to Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu with one of her needs. So Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu invited her towards Islam and said that, "O elderly woman, become Muslim. You will become peaceful. You will become the one upon whom peace would shower." Allah sent Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam with truth. Now that woman, she expressed her old age before Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu. Then she said that now death is very near me. So Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu said that, "O Allah, be witness," meaning that I did not force her to embrace Islam. Then he radiyallahu anhu recited this part of verse number 256 of Surah Al-Baqarah, "La ikraha fid deen." There's no compulsion in Islam. There's no enforcing in Islam to make anyone accept Islam. There's no compulsion. Subhanallah. So dear viewers, you can imagine that Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu is the leader of the believers, an elderly woman. She is in front of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu, and how beautifully he invites her to Islam. And there's no compulsion, there's no force used. And he even goes to the extent of saying that, "O Allah, be witness that I did not force her to embrace Islam. I did not use force. There was no compulsion upon her." And then he recited the verse, "La ikraha fid deen." There's no compulsion in Islam. Subhanallah. There's another account, dear viewers, through which we can see a glimpse of the freedom that was given during the time of the Caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu to practice your own faith. So he radiyallahu anhu had a Christian slave whose name was Usiq. Now he says that once Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu said to me that if you embrace Islam, then we will take your assistance, your help, your services in the matters of Muslims. Because to us, taking help from disbelievers regarding the matters of Muslims is not permissible. So he says that I refused to accept Islam. So Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu recited this verse, "La ikraha fid deen," meaning there's no compulsion in religion, there's no enforcing in religion. So the slave, he says that when the time of the passing of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu came, he freed me. Even though I was Christian at that time, he freed me and he said that you are free. You may go wherever you want. Subhanallah. Again, dear viewers, in this account, we can see that Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu, he is the leader of the believers. No one can stop him. He can do whatever he wants. But yet, to a slave, he radiyallahu anhu invited him towards Islam through character, without any force, without any compulsion. And the slave, he did not accept that. He refused to embrace Islam. And Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu recited the verse of the Quran that there's no compulsion in Islam. There's no enforcing in Islam. And he radiyallahu anhu did not torture him thereafter or did not treat him differently thereafter. He was treated in the same way as he was prior to this very invitation. Not only this, dear viewers, at the time when Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu was about to pass away, he radiyallahu anhu freed that slave and said to him, told him that you may go wherever you want. Subhanallah. Dear viewers, this is the freedom that was given during the time of the Caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu, the fairness that was established during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu, the equality that everyone experienced at that time. These are the foundations, those principles, dear viewers, which Islam gives us. And Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu duly implemented them. There's no compulsion in Islam, there's no enforcing in Islam. Otherwise, dear viewers, Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu could have forced his slave to accept Islam. He was the leader, he could have, done whatever he wanted. But he radiyallahu anh did not enforce Islam upon him. He did not exercise compulsion. He did not enforce anything upon him. He radiyallahu anh invited him through character. He radiyallahu anh invited him through virtue. And even he did not accept the invitation of Islam, still Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh kept him as his slave, did not treat him differently, and at the time of his passing, he even freed him, saying that you may go wherever you want. Subhanallah. This is the greatness of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh and of his caliphate, which was founded on the principles, on the golden principles of Islam. Dear viewers, during the caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, there was open freedom for anyone to visit whichever city he wanted, wherever he wanted to go. There was no stoppage for him. There was no one was limited to enter a certain area and not the other. Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh had made it very easy. There was freedom from this very perspective as well, that people were easy to come and go wherever they wanted to. Similarly, dear viewers, the provisions of people, the properties of people, they were also preserved during the time of Sayyiduna Umar Farooq radiallahu anh, and whatever they wanted to keep, which was theirs, they had the right to do so, and their rights from this perspective again were preserved. Now this can be reflected from this very account, dear viewers, where there was a treaty between the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the disbelievers of Khaybar. And the disbelievers of Khaybar, they violated this treaty, they breached it. Now what they did was that they tortured Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anh during the caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, whereas in the treaty it was mentioned that they will not harm any Muslim in any way. But what they did was that they tortured Sayyiduna Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anh. Now Sayyidina Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh banished them, exiled them from Madinatul Munawwara. Why? Because of breaching the treaty. So this was their due recompense. However, their property, their provisions, Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh preserved them duly. He radiallahu anh did not let any Muslim harm their properties or take over their provisions. Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, he took care of it, and he radiallahu anh gave them equal monetary amount of their land and property that they possessed in that very region. But because they had violated the treaty themselves, now the due recompense for them was to banish them from Madinatul Munawwara. So although they were banished, they were those who had violated the treaty. Now Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, he is the leader, but have a look at his justice, that their properties, their provisions that were in that land, they were still preserved, and Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh looked after them, did not let anyone take over it or take them into their custody. Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh gave them the due monetary amount of that very land, because of course the house or the land cannot be taken away with a person once he's banished. But the justice and freedom of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh was such that he preserved those properties, those provisions of those disbelievers, and he radiallahu anh gave them the equal monetary amount of that very property that they had within that land from which they were banished. There's another account, dear viewers, which highlights the freedom that was given to people from the perspective of having their personal properties and having their personal provisions in the caliphate of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh. So dear viewers, as we know that Islam had spread far and wide during the era of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, and now the Muslims, they increased in numbers during his golden era. So the place in Masjidul Haram, it became narrow, it became small for the Muslims to offer salah there. So Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh intended to extend Masjidul Haram. Now, for this purpose, the houses of many people would also come within the extension of Masjidul Haram. So Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh, subhanallah, what justice he practiced over here was that they were given similar kinds of houses in another location, another similar kind of location, or they were given very good monetary amount, due monetary amount. So the phenomenal justice which Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anh practiced at this time was that the people whose houses were coming within the construction of Masjidul Haram, that they should be given a similar kind of property, similar kind of house in similar kind of location elsewhere, or the house should be purchased from them at the market value of the time. A decent amount should be paid to them, and the property should be bought from them with their consent, with their willingness. So this is exactly what was done, and those houses were purchased from those people, giving them the due market value of that time, upon which they were happy, upon which they were willing to do so. So these houses were bought by Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu, and that area was then also brought in the construction of Masjidul Haram. Now dear viewers, another distinct feature of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu's biography from the perspective of freedom that people were given during his caliphate can also be seen from the perspective of people being able to voice their concerns in front of the Caliph of the time, in front of the ruler of the time. They could voice their concerns of whatever nature it may be in front of the ruler of the time. They had no fear whatsoever of doing so. So people, they were given the chance to voice their concerns so that their issues and problems could be brought before Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu. And from this perspective as well, dear viewers, if you look into it, a society cannot duly prosper unless all the issues from the grassroots level are not brought forward before the ruler of the time. And Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu gave this permission to people at the grassroots level to come forward and voice their concerns to the ruler of the time. And again, upon this, dear viewers, the conduct of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu was exemplary. It was something which again cannot be seen in the history of the mankind. So whenever anyone would reform him due to his own misunderstanding, thinking that maybe a reform is required for Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu here, he radiallahu anhu would thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over it. This was the conduct of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu. Sayyiduna Hudhayfa radiallahu anhu narrates that once I visited Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu, and he was in his home and he was addressing himself. So I went to him and I asked that, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, what is it that has worried you? So Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu gestured something. So I said that, why are you worrying? If we see anything of such in your nature, then we will reform you. And then he said that, by Allah, except whom there is none worthy of worship, that if you find anything in my nature, in my character, then will you reform me? So I said, yes, by Allah, besides whom there is none worthy of worship, that if we see anything of such nature in you, then we will reform you. Listening to this, he radiallahu anhu became extremely happy, and he said that all praise is due to Allah, who made you born amongst the ashab, amongst the companions of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, that who, when they look anything bad in me, they would reform me. Allahu Akbar. Dear viewers, once Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu was giving a sermon, and he bowed his head on one side and he said that, O Muslims, if I bow my head like this towards this world, then what would you do? So one person stood up and he took his sword out and he said that we will talk you in the language of the sword. So he radiallahu anhu said that, do you know what it means, what you just said? He said, yes, I know what it means very well. So Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu asked him this 3 times and he replied the same in 3 times as well. So Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu was so impressed with his truthfulness, and he said that all praise to Allah, who made such people born in my caliphate, in my subjects, who have the courage of reforming me. Allahu Akbar. Dear viewers, where would we find such rulers from today? That Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu is appreciating the one who reforms him. Whereas today, if someone gains a position, a rank, and someone below him in rank comes and tries to reform him, Allahu Akbar, what is our situation? What is our reaction? Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu is the leader of the believers. He is the leader of the time, and he himself is saying these words. He's appreciating those who come and reform him. And other people also have this ease and comfort of raising their voice in the court of Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ, because they know the justice, the equality that Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ had established. Once Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ had a few Yemeni shuls. A few Yemeni shuls came to Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ, and he started to distribute them one by one amongst Muslims. After this, he رضی اللہ عنہ stood amongst the people and started to deliver a sermon. At that time, he رضی اللہ عنہ was wearing a gown made of Yemeni shawl. So he had just said, "May Allah shower mercy upon you," that all of a sudden a person stood up. He interfered and he said that, "O Amirul Mu'mineen, by Allah we will not listen. By Allah we will not listen." So Amirul Mu'mineen, Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu, he said that, "O bondsman of Allah, what is the matter? Why wouldn't you listen?" He said that you're oppressing us in the matter of the world, that you're granting everyone one shawl each, whereas you're present before us with a gown, wearing a gown made of a Yemeni's shawl. You're wearing a gown and present in front of us whilst you're distributing one shawl amongst all of us, one shawl each amongst all of us. So upon this, he said that, "Where is Abdullah ibn Umar?" Meaning his own son, radiallahu anhu. So he came and he said that, "I'm present." So Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu asked him that the two shawls that I'm wrapping around myself, one shawl which is additional, can you please explain this? So dear viewers, you can see that one additional shawl that Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu has, he called his son to give an explanation for this to the people who are present in front of him. So people in front of him, they're asking him for a clarity over one additional shawl that he has, the leader of the time. People are questioning the leader of the time, and he didn't say to them that, "Who are you to question me? I'm the leader of the time. I've got all the power with me." He didn't say these words to the layman who stood up and asked this question. Rather, what does he do? He asks for his son and asks his son to give an explanation regarding one extra shawl that he has. So he replies that this shawl is mine, meaning Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, his son, he replies that this shawl is mine. Then Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu addressed that person. He said that, "O servant of Allah, you were hasty in this. You rushed in this matter. Whereas I'd washed my clothes. That is why I borrowed this shawl from Abdullah ibn Umar," meaning I borrowed from him to use it. Listening to this, the person was satisfied and he said that, "Now we will listen to you and also obey you." Allahu Akbar. Dear viewers, imagine if the same question is asked in today's day and age to any person of authority, what would be the reaction of that very person? But this was not any ordinary individual, dear viewers. This was the second Caliph of Islam, our master Umar Bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu, who had given such comfort level to even laymen of his caliphate that they could even stand up and question the leader of the time without any fear. Why? Because they had seen the justice that Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu had established within his caliphate. Once, dear viewers, a matter arose between Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu and another person, and he said that, "O Umar, fear Allah." Upon this, someone said to him that, "You are saying fear Allah to Amirul Mu'mineen?" So seeing this, Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu said to him that there's no good in you. There's no good in you if you do not say it good. And there's no good in us if we do not accept it. Subhanallah. So another person is saying to Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu that, "O Umar, fear Allah." Now a third person says that you're saying this to Amirul Mu'mineen. And now Amirul Mu'mineen says to the third person that there's no good in you if you don't say the good. And there's no good in us if we don't accept it. Allahu Akbar. Dear viewers, this was the conduct of Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu, the freedom he had given in his caliphate to normal people to voice their concerns or raise their voice in order to even reform the leader of the time. This is how openly and how freely the people were to voice their concerns, voice their issues. Dear viewers, Farooq-e-Azam radiallahu anhu was that leader who had given so much freedom and vastness in his caliphate to people from every perspective. If we talk about from the perspective of issuing religious verdicts, the edicts. Subhanallah. Again, Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ had given the permission and authority of performing ijtihad to the Qazi and Mufti Sahaba of his caliphate as well. So when Sayyiduna Shurayh rahmatullah alayh was appointed as the Qazi, then Farooq-e-Azam رضی اللہ عنہ wrote to him and he granted him permission to perform ijtihad, independent reasoning, in these words. He said that first make decision from the Book of Allah, then the Sunnah of the Prophet, and then from the ijma' of the Ummah, from the consensus of the Ummah. And if an issue is not resolved from any of these three means, then perform ijtihad, then perform independent reasoning. So dear viewers, again we can see that Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu gave freedom to the elite companions and competent qazis of his caliphate, in his caliphate, to perform ijtihad, independent reasoning. And those who were competent, of course, he radiyallahu anhu gave them this permission, and they also executed it duly, without any pressure, without any fear. Dear viewers, Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu, as soon as he became the Caliph, subhanallah, he addressed the people, and what he mentioned in this very address is again something amazing, from where we can see that the foundation of giving freedom and vastness was at the very start of his caliphate, where he said that, O people, by commanding good, by forbidding from evil, and by sermonizing over what I've been made your guardian for, please help me. Subhanallah. Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu said that, O people, help me by commanding good, by forbidding from evil, and by sermonizing me over what I've been made guardian for you. Subhanallah. On one occasion, Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu said that, O people, it is our right upon you that you stay our well-wisher in our absence, and you help us in good. Subhanallah. There are countless accounts, dear viewers, that we can go through which tell us how Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu had given this freedom, had given this vastness to people in his caliphate over various matters, whether it was in practicing your faith, whether it was in practicing your business, your trade, whether it was in terms of increasing your provisions, your wealth, whether it was from the perspective of reforming the leader of the time himself, whether it was from the perspective of coming and going in any area you wanted, you name it, dear viewers. From every perspective, the freedom and vastness that Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu gave during his caliphate, that was second to none, that was exemplary. And this again shows us the brilliance, the great wisdom and insightfulness that Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu had, and no wonder why Islam spread so far and wide during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu, and the most number of non-Muslims embraced Islam during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu at the time. No wonder why. It was because of the freedom, the justice, the equality that was exercised and practiced during the time of Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu. So dear viewers, in today's episode, we just covered briefly regarding the freedom and vastness that Farooq-e-Azam radiyallahu anhu had established during his caliphate, which led to the opening of many wisdoms and many victories for the Muslims, and for many non-Muslims to accept Islam, many non-believers to come in the folds of Islam. We pray to Allah Almighty that may Allah Almighty shower His choicest of mercies and blessings upon our master, upon the second Caliph of Islam, Sayyiduna Umar Bin Khattab رضی اللہ عنہ, and may Allah Almighty forgive us all without accountability for His sake. Ameen. Bijahi khatamin nabiyyin sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Sallu ala al-habib sallallahu ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.
The second Caliph of Islam, Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu. Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu